Stay free with me, Russell Brand.
When it comes to the Qatar World Cup, and we talk about colonialism, imperialism, workers' rights, the value of human life, corruption, sports washing, all really important subjects. But the World Cup has, in a sense, lost its way some time ago. In 2018, it was held in Russia, and probably every country it's been held in since its inauguration has questions unanswered about its regime. What nation has a history unblemished? How do you build power? How do you create a centralized state without a degree of tyranny, oppression, control of a narrative, imprisonment of dissidents? And I think what's important right now is that the world appears to be moving in the direction of more centralized power. You have overt announcements from people like Macron about the dangers of a multipolar or even a bipolar world.
We need a single global order.
You want one solitary power. They explicitly and overtly say we want a global order where we have the ability to surveil a population. You could forgive the people of Qatar for saying, well, look, we got our own narrative, we got our own story, we got our own history. What is it in particular about Qatar exploitation of human rights? Because if you think, well, let's just take one issue, LGBTQ plus issues, well, where were our Western societies 50 years ago or 60 years ago? Can you not envisage a society 5, 10, 20, 30 years more advanced than us come in and discerning and purveying our cultures and saying, hey, what's the story with the inequality? What's the story with the homelessness? What I suppose this argument returns us to is a morality that is about what you are willing to sacrifice, what you are willing to change in yourself, not how long and hard you're willing to point at other people saying, why don't you change this? Why don't you change that? It has to ultimately be, I am going to practice these principles in my life. I am going to be fair. I am going to be just. I'm going to stand up for what I believe in, and I'm going to oppose the things that I oppose vociferously and steadfastly. Now, the Qatar World Cup announced itself on the global stage with what I would call a peculiar festival. Opening ceremonies, Gal, can be strange anyway, can't they?
Surely we're over the opening ceremony now, aren't we? I mean, once you've seen them one, you've seen them all.
Yeah, well, I would have said so.
Well, maybe not this one.
But this has got some off-key components.
Yeah.
It's Morgan, if you've seen it by now, let us know in the chat. But it's Morgan Freeman striding through a desert scape with crouched figures, with a fella who has an upper body only, having a chat with him, telling him that everyone's welcome in the Bedouin tent. Let's have a little look and see what it evokes in you.
This is all so new. All that I have known before was a land that seemed to be in turmoil, with families who have forgotten, and I stopped hearing the unrest.
What is happening? I mean, it's very abstract, isn't it? Morgan Freeman is in the desert and he's in a state of real inquiry. I have known only turmoil. I'm wearing a golf club, I think, because of an accident. I've got a lot of questions and inquiries. The World Cup now, like even the most ardent football fans have to sort of clench and accept that it's a compromise. But me and Gareth used to do a lovely little football podcast, Football is Nice, which by God should return. We're both very devoted football fans in a sort of kind of casual way. But it's pretty clear that the World Cup is primarily a commercial enterprise. If it wasn't, you'd say, let's not have anyone sponsor this World Cup whose products are adversarial to health.
Yeah,
So,
to playing football.
Yeah, you're not. How good will you be at football if you drink loads and loads of Coca-Cola and eat loads of McDonald's? Well, probably not very good. Well, let's cancel their sponsorship right away. So, in a sense, there's only morality where the morality doesn't cost you. That's what I'm starting to believe. It's only morality where it can be practiced through just saying stuff rather than doing stuff. So, and I suppose that's a sort of another way of describing virtue signalling. Now, I'm not an anti-woke person. I think the values of wokeness, like tolerance of people's individual identity, the rights for people from all backgrounds, classes, cultures, creeds, races to express themselves free, I agree with all of those ideas. What we're querying here is the utilisation of those principles for ultimately for commercial outcomes and to create cultural division. So when I look at dear old Morgan Freeman, wandering through this sort of peculiar desert, which is actually the centre of a stadium built by migrant labour. And I've not seen the death toll. Is there a death toll?
I think there is pretty high.
It's a death toll. There's a death toll. But then, I don't know how many people have died in accidents in the last couple of hundred years building sites of commerce.
How many US service people go to war and die in the name of What, lies?
Yeah, well, like you could answer that question for yourself. What was the last Iraq war for? What was the Afghanistan war for? Any war, could it be argued, is ultimately the pursuit of commercial interests abroad? And I don't think the UK is cleansed of that. It's just a sort of a century earlier that we were conquering India on behalf of the East India Tea Company and various African nations, also on behalf of commercial and corporate interests. It just seems so seldom, Gareth, that people are actually, I really believe in this. This is what I actually care about. Ultimately, it's just a set of conflicting commercial interests, just attempts to gain power and create commercial opportunity.
So I'll read you this by Nesrin Malik, this paragraph. Qatar only managed to manoeuvre itself into this prime position by soliciting the support of powerful states that have fast-tracked its passage into polite society. It is armed to the teeth by the UK, Europe and the US, and is a joint venture in monumental, lucrative financial and real estate transactions on European soil.
Can I ask you, before you go any further, about, in particular, arms transactions? I feel like the UK has sold billions of arms to Qatar, and I can't imagine that the US would allow any market to remain dormant for too long.
Yeah, the UK sold £3.4 billion of weapons to Qatar recently. I know Trump sold 12 billion to Qatar, and it's an ongoing thing. And you can not just take Qatar, you can say Saudi Arabia. There's the same situation there with the United States. These supposed, repressive regimes that we're all so critical of. Well, that doesn't make much difference when it comes to arms sales.
In a sense, you have to, in some way or another, extract the event from that kind of morality or accept its true complexity. It's almost impossible to think England won 6-2 earlier today against Iran. Like that. How can you enjoy that if you're thinking about the true complexity? But also, you have to incorporate how we got there, our own involvement, to think that this is Qatar, particularly, uniquely and solely Qatar. We're over here. We're fantastic.
So obviously it's not about saying, the things that have gone on in Qatar are fine because we've done awful things as well. But it is about who gets to control the narrative.
I think I'll hand it over to Morgan Freeman, who seems to have worked it all out in his usual fashion. Morgan Freeman, who is sort of like the West's de facto voice of God, isn't he? He's been the voice of God several times, and here he is doing that once again.
Am I welcome?
We sent out the call because everyone is welcome. This is an invitation to the whole world.
I remember even after hearing the call, and instead of seeing another way, we dismissed it and demanded our own.
I suppose people will be cynical about the deployment of the gentleman there with the, I guess, how would you call it, with sort of like without legs or whatever. Like they could say, no, they've just exploitatively put them there because they know that Qatar are being criticised for many of their sort of social policies. But there's a point, isn't there, where you have to query the right of a country to have their own ideology? Are we saying that Islam, and I know some people vocally do say that Islam shouldn't be used as a principle for governance. It should be like a private religion, that you should have advanced private religions rather than, like part of Islam's appeal and essence is that it's an organisational principle for government and for social and personal and religious life. It doesn't see those things as distinct. And secularism is a very particular and obviously modern argument, the idea that you should separate religious life from the life of governance. But also that comes with bloody problems because you don't find, how's secularism going in Western nations? Are you finding that was there another ideology that stepped into that vacuum to do with, wow.
There is only one ideology. We don't care ultimately, really. Since it won the right to host the World Cup, it's been granted billions of pounds in weapons sales licences, including sophisticated surveillance equipment by Britain. Qatar is not a pariah state. It exists in a global political system of Western sponsors that have forged deep alliances with Gulf monarchies and extended them immunity. The state of Qatar is actually the 10th largest landowner in Britain, did you know?
Did you know that? In our country, Britain, I don't want to get all nationalistic, I'm trying to get beyond these kind of ideas and slurs, but Qatar are the 10th largest landowner. You know that I was recently involved in that protest against Thames Water dumping sewage into the River Thames, who think they'd have a vested interest in. And you find out that Qatar and Kuwait and Canada own significant parts of Thames Water. You are already in a land colonised by capital. I'm not anti-capitalist in some reductive way, like the state should control control everything. That's not what I'm offering you. I'm saying that we're living in such an advanced state of corporatism that even the streets you walk in are already owned by foreign concerns as a result of deals done behind closed doors that were never voted for, that are never going to get anywhere near democracy. Of course, that's why the limited areas that you are allowed to discuss as part of democracy, hot button topics like arms, abortion, civil rights issues, which are not unimportant issues, but compared to where real power lies, they are, if not secondary, they could be regarded as distractions. Certainly, the truly powerful are happy for us to kill each other over those ideas while they get on owning everything.
Yeah, there's only one set of arms that you're allowed to debate, actually. It's those right to bear. It's not the ones that we sell to Saudi Arabia.
What about Saudi Arabia's arms? What about the submerged narratives that we could mention on Rumble?
Watch entire episodes on demand for free at rumble.com/Russell Brand.